Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Pranzata podcast. This is your host, Andrea Pranzatelli. This is episode number 68 on my podcast. You almost got 69. Sorry,
Woo,
we're saving.
Almost.
We're saving that.
Damn it!
You guys have to wait to see who it is. This is Kevin Carrier. He is a stand-up comedian from South Jersey. He also has a podcast called the Hangover Comedy Podcast. And he has a lot of other interesting stuff that I'm going to ask him about in this podcast. So let's get right into it. My first question for you, this is my first podcast of the new year, so it would only be appropriate for me to ask like year reflection type questions. So my first question is, reflecting on last year, was it a good year for you? Like if you had to recap everything.
So last year was a great year for me. Definitely improved a lot in the stand-up, just in the stand-up realm and the comedy realm, because like just got better at writing and just writing every day. Because like the previous year I was just like writing off and on, but like writing every day was like really tough. That was like a New Year's resolution I made in 2022, and I was able to stick to it mostly.
How long have you been doing comedy for?
So I've been doing stand-up since March of 2021. So I'm still really new at it, like less than 2 years.
Okay, so, cool. Yeah. And it's funny for me, like last year, the year before 2021, I had a lot of goals that I set, but I fucked up a lot of things on the financial end. So 2022 was all about like repairing like problems.
2021.
Repairing 2021. And like, I mean, like I got a lot done, but it was all about like fixing the mistakes I made in 2021 and then kind of starting over. So this year I'm like, I have a solid foundation and like, I'm going to try to do 2021 over again, basically. Next question is, for the next year coming, 2023, which is technically now, it's like weird to think about. Yeah. Of all your goals, what's like your biggest priority or one of your biggest priorities?
So my biggest priority is to at least make some side income with comedy, at least in some sort of realm, right? Whether it be sponsorship for my podcast or running my own comedy showcase. Yeah. That's like in a bar or whatever. Yeah. Because like, I mean, I have a full-time job. I'm a software engineer. Yeah. Right? So I'm not like strapped for cash, but it's like I want to at least make this something where I'm like, okay, I'm at least moving towards goals where I can at least make some money with this. Like rather than just open mics or shows where I'm not getting paid. So, yeah. That's
funny. That's kind of a similar goal as me. I want to have a lot more money. Like I sound shallow saying I want money this year, but the reason I want money is so I could do good things with it. So I can have creative freedom. Yeah. And I'm not like, money's not going to be in the way of those things. And I want to, help people with the money or whatever. So I'm like totally on the same page as you. As a new comedian, what's the most you've gotten paid? I'm curious.
$50.
Okay. That's about right. Like usually at a show, if it's a paid show, because a lot of the times it isn't.
It's not paid.
It's usually not paid. But
a lot of people don't know that either. They're always like, are you, is like comedian, like, is that your full-time job? Like, no, like we do not get paid that much. It's very difficult. To get to that realm.
Like I have a lot of musician friends who like they're like, damn, we don't make enough money, but it's even worse for a comedian. Either they don't get paid at all or they get paid like a beer, like that's their payment, or they get paid $20, but $50 is like pretty, that's good.
Oh for sure. Like I was so excited about that opportunity and it just felt so good I was able to make something out of it. But I think like the reason why it's so hard to get paid in stand-up is there's always new comedians that will just do it for free. So that's the problem.
So, like, but then you get what you pay
for that
for
stage
too,
time.
as
you know, like hey, like we won't pay you, but like if you want to do like 20 minutes, whatever, unpaid, they're like yeah, sure, I'll do it, whatever. And then like
one of my goals this year is to put together a project where it's music and comedy combined, so it's like a full band. Like so for example, I'll maybe have like 4 comedians and then afterwards like an hour of live music. And the reason I want to do that is because musicians tend to be able to get more money because they have all the gear to lug around and everything like that. 100%. So I think it would be cool if like, let's say, I don't know, I got $600 out of a venue and I could actually pay the comedians a little something. I just think that would be so cool, you know?
100%.
There would probably be like a ranking too. There would probably be like the newest comedian only gets like $10, and then like maybe the headliner might get like $80 or something. Like I just think that would be such a cool thing to do.
So you do music, right? Do you?
Yes.
Is it like comedy music, like Bo Burnham, or is it just like?
No, a lot of people have told me, why don't you do that? Your life would be so much more simple. I love Bo Burnham. He's one of my favorites, but so it's not my talent to write like that. Probably if I were to marry the two together. I have done this before, and I would like to do more of this year. I like to play music at comedy shows. So I had a gig in New York City once where it was like an ongoing gig, but they cut music out of the budget, unfortunately, because they couldn't afford it anymore. Yeah. But I would be on stage with like piano, and the comedian would walk on stage, and I would like play a little jingle. Sometimes they would ask me like, oh, can you like sometimes the comedians would randomly improv and start singing. They'd be like, hey, can you play this song? And I would just have to come up with stuff. So I would love it'd be like, you ever see like, I don't know, Saturday Night Live, they have like live musicians on stage. It's or basically like that. So
gotcha.
It's a lot of fun. Okay, so we asked you the New Year's questions. Next question. So you mentioned you're a software engineer. It's funny, I get so many comedians on here that I've already asked so many comedian questions. So I have more questions about software engineering.
Let's do it.
Because, it's a fresh perspective. All right. What exactly does a software engineer do? Like, do you work on apps or anything? Like, do you make sure everything functions? Like, how does this work?
So it's a very broad term, and it depends on the company, and like you can go into many different areas. Technically, what I do is I work on a lot of back-end stuff, API. So I guess the term API, not to get too technical.
We have to explain this to idiots.
The best way I can describe it and people understand it is like, when you go on Spotify and it asks you like to log in with your Facebook account, right? Yeah. They're using Facebook's API because they don't really have Facebook's data. So Facebook has like a live API where any developer can use it, and you can just have the login button. It'll go to Facebook, and then Facebook will give you only the data that you need, not your entire Facebook data, just like, just your profile name and your username or your email, right? Okay. Whatever Spotify needs to create an account. Okay. So an API is basically, hey, we want some data. We're going to give you specific pieces of data, the only data that you need, though. Yeah. Right? So instead of this whole package of like, hey, here's all Andrea's data, though, like you can do whatever you want with the Spotify. Like we're only going to give you the name and the email address, not like, what is she like on Facebook? Who are her friends list or whatever, stuff like that, right?
So as someone who's in the business, do you think the public like there's a lot of conspiracy theories about the data and stuff like that? Is there something that we don't, or?
I think it depends on the company. I mean, these big companies are not supposed to like be malicious with your data, right? Yeah. And there's like terms of service and everything. No one reads the terms of service. Like, like there's like this whole like 500-page thing. Like, we won't do anything with your data, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I can say that there are certain companies that are going to be better with security than others. Okay. So a lot of times, like a big company will be like Facebook or Spotify. They're going to be really big on security because they have so many users, right? Okay. If you're like a startup, you're not really thinking about security. You're thinking about how can I get more users, though. So you're going to cut corners in some ways. And so maybe your data might not be as secure because it's not on top of mind, right? Yeah. So, I think it depends on what you're using.
So sometimes the lack of security in the data isn't necessarily something malicious. It's just because they're a startup, they're not as experienced.
Correct. Or they don't even have like a security person like on the payroll. They're just like outsourcing that to something else, right?
Gotcha.
So because like as a startup, you're thinking about how can I get more users? How can I, get more money? Because you have investors who are feeding you money, so you're trying to get more users.
It's fun. I'm glad I'm asking you this because, like, as somebody who isn't in technology field at all whatsoever, like this is the bulk of my technology is doing a podcast. Like that's my tech. And it's not like I'm not great at tech either. I just do what I have to do. Like I never thought of it that way as like we like the non-tech people, we think of it as like there's the people who collect the data, and I never thought of it in a way that it's like, well, there's individual companies. There might be one that's malicious, and then there might be one that's good. They're all completely different. I never thought about that.
100%. And there are people who are security engineers who are like in cybersecurity. I don't do that. That's a really technical job. Yeah. If you know how to do that job, forget it. Like millions of dollars probably per year because it's just such a technical job. Gotcha. And you have to be like on it because there's always somebody who's gonna try to find a loophole though, right?
Gotcha.
So. And there's actually like in the security world, a lot of these hackers who are called like red hats though, like the malicious hackers, they'll become white hats and like work for these companies. So a lot of these security people who work at like Facebook or Amazon, whatever, right? They probably used to be someone who was malicious, but then like they now Facebook is paying them so much money where now they're using that skill to like be more of like a good guy.
Gotcha. So, that's interesting.
It's interesting, yeah. So.
There's like a whole secret world going on.
Yeah,
here.
it's like an Edward Snowden, basically. You know, so.
My next question for you about software engineering. I had to like read about it a little bit because like I'm like I said, I don't really know much, so I'm like I don't even know what to ask.
Yeah.
I read that a lot of it is coding.
Yeah.
Explain to someone who doesn't know what coding, like if you had to try to explain it to a beginner, what is coding? Like, what does that mean?
So coding is basically just a bunch of instructions of what you're going to give to a computer, right?
Okay.
So you're basically, it's a lot of like logic. We've all seen in these movies, right, where you see the screen and it's like the black screen, like red, green text, and it's like just a bunch of like random stuff on it. You're basically just giving it instructions though, and the computer is like running it based on like whatever language that you're using or whatever. How are you? Because there's so many different coding languages as well. Like I usually program in Python and JavaScript, and there's a lot of other like Java and a lot of other languages. I don't want to bore everybody, but so I guess the simplest way to say it is like we're giving instructions to the computer to run some sort of task. Though.
And the language is like. It's not actual words. It's just like keystrokes or like
no. It's a programming language. Yeah. So so a lot of like nerds, the programming nerds, will have like a little joke like, yeah, like I'm bilingual, like I know English and Python and JavaScript and like.
You should use it on your stand-up. I don't know. I mean, if no one knows what it is, they won't get it.
There's comedians who've done that before. I'm like, I don't want to like,
like take
hacky stuff, you know.
That's true.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. I never knew like what coding was, but I know what you're talking about. Like in the movies, they see a bunch of like stuff on a screen.
Yeah. I mean, basically.
And so a lot of when you're coding, a lot of it is trial and error too.
A lot of it's so much trial and error.
It's almost like you're almost like a scientist in a way. You're like a tech
that's why
scientist.
It's called like computer science. Is like what I had my degree in though. So you are like a scientist. So you are trial and error and trying to figure out the best solution because there's a lot of things you can think about like. There's a thing called like time complexity, right? So sometimes if you go on a page, you know, like sometimes a web page it loads so long, it takes like so long to run, and some pages are really quick though, right? Yeah. Well, there's some code that's like running it, right? Yeah. And if you're a good software engineer, you can figure out better ways to how to get the load time down, and maybe you're caching some data, or maybe you're separating, you're saving it to like another database, whatever, right? Yeah. There's different ways of how you can plan how to like save data, load data into the program to make that page run faster. Interesting. Wow. So. I'm learning, like, it's funny, like I throw the term, oh my God, oh my God, the cat's in the ceiling. My bad. So I hope you're not allergic to cats. I don't know if you can see them, but wait. I just saw an animal like crawling around. Oh, really? Sorry if this is like boring. It's not my cat. I have 2 cats, but that's my roommate's cat. Oh, it's a roommate's I'm probably boring the audience right now. No. It just like startled me because I was like, oh my God, there's an animal in here. And I was like, no, that's just the roommate's cat. He's like walking through the basement ceiling. That's so weird. If you see like an animal walking in the ceiling, it's not just like a stray cat. All right, I do have another software. I was like asked more software engineering questions. Yeah, totally. The last question is, oh no, I have 2 more. So my next question is, why did you become a software engineer? Was it because you thought it would be lucrative, or was it because you genuinely had a passion and talent for this? So it basically started when I was in high school. I went to a vocational school. Okay. So vocational school is like you're taking high school classes. It's for like but the bad kids. No, I'm just kidding. No. No, it used to be for the bad kids, but now it's actually for the smart kids. So vocational school is like where you're taking high school classes, but you're also taking some sort of major on top of it as well, right? So, okay, yeah. So like at the school I went to ACIT, which is Atlantic County Institute of Technology. Yeah. It was like the second year I think of it opening, right? So there was only like 3 options you really had. Yeah. Which was health science, culinary, and IT, right?
So you're like, I do one of these.
So like I gotta do one of it, and like I wasn't doing culinary because I was 14 at the time, right? 'Cause I'm going to high school, and I never cooked anything at that time. So I'm like, I can't just like go into a culinary and like go cold turkey, you know. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that. And then with health science, like I never liked the sight of blood, so I'm like, I can't really do that either. So I'm like, I'll just do IT, right? And like at the time, Steve Jobs was coming out with the new iPhone, right? So I'm like, okay, well maybe this might be lucrative. I don't know, right? And then the iPhone and the smartphone came out, and I was still in high school. I'm like, okay, well then maybe this is a thing.
Yeah.
But it was really there was like a web design course in my junior year that I really liked. I'm like, okay, this is really cool, and just like making like a website and putting it on the internet, and I can like go to this website. Like, oh, like I made this though, right?
So it's like a combination of both. It's not like one or the other. It was like a combination of convenience that it was one of the things for you, but then you kind of fell in love with it as you went along.
Of course, yeah. And then like in college I actually started with computer engineering, which is a little bit different. There's more like physics with it. Yeah. Right? And I thought like, oh, because like maybe you can make more money with it. It's more on the hardware side. Yeah. But then like in that first semester, like I was bombing all the physics and calculus classes. So I'm like, you know what? Let me just do software and computer science, which is you're still in that computer realm, but it's not as physics heavy though, where you have to worry about like the inside of the computer and all the little microchips and everything. That's what the software, the computer engineer has to work with. More of like an electrical engineer kind of thing. Gotcha.
Okay. So do you need to know a good amount of mathematics to do this job?
So you need to know problem solving, and math has problem solving in it. Okay. So you don't necessarily have to have math, but you have to have problem solving. And that's what so you will take a lot of math courses just to get that problem solving skill. But if you can get that in other ways, like through puzzles or some other way where you're getting your mind to think like, okay, I have this problem, I have to figure out what's the best way to solve it. That's,
Okay. Yeah. So my next question for you is, it's kind of transitioning into comedy with this question. Does your job as a software engineer keep your mind sharp to help your joke writing? Or does it like drain your creative? Like, does it help or hinder?
I would say I think it's neutral. I don't know if it helps or hinders. It helps that I have a job where I work remotely, which is awesome. I love working remotely, and where I can just work from like different places.
You mentioned that you like to travel a lot.
I do like to travel a lot. So for me, that's really good for me. And it's just a good like stable 9-to-5 job, right? Yeah. And so also like the hours are like secure, right? Yeah. Where it's like, it's not fluctuating where I'm like, oh, I might work like 9-to-5, then I got to work 2 to 10. Or then, because then that messes with the whole open mic, because most open mics are like at night, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I do think it does help because that is like all my whole logic brain just like sticks in with the whole software engineering. Yeah. And then a lot of the like emotional improvisational stuff, right, is I'll do with like my comedy, right? So it kind of is like almost like a superpower where I get this like double brain.
The left brain and the right brain. So it's kind of like you're exercising both brains.
Exactly.
Both sides of your brain.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I'm sure they do help each other, like even if it's like a subconscious thing that like there's got to be like something lighting up in your brain from one skill. You know?
Right. And that's another thing too. I don't have enough tech jokes. A lot of people are like, oh, you should just do like tech jokes or whatever.
You really should.
Just like lean into the whole tech thing. I'm like, okay, well this year I'll start focusing on tech jokes, because I don't want to like to be so technical where the audience is like, it just goes over people's head. Yeah. But like there are certain things you can talk about, like AI, maybe at a general level, or maybe Twitter, maybe like at a general level. You can,
because I think some of my favorite comedians are the ones who like just like really get into their character. There was this new comedian that I saw recently. I can't remember her name. Sorry, I would shout her out, but I can't remember her name. But she kind of blew up. And she was I think she was either a middle school. I think she's a middle school teacher. And she did something on Comedy Central, and I watched her like Instagram profile blow up within like seconds. Like she had like 1,000 followers, and by the end of the day, she had like 10,000. And her whole like thing was talking about her job as a middle school teacher, and she just went like, it was just kind of a unique, fresh perspective, like just to see like it's just like your middle school teacher like cursing on stage. Of course. You know what I mean? Yeah, so 100%. I think you can have a similar advantage in that way, where you could be like the nerdy tech guy, you're like, oh, that guy like has jokes. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't expect
or like
it.
making fun of it, like just being super like technical, just like in like a sarcastic way or something like that. Because again, like I think like a middle school teacher, like a lot of people can relate to that.
Relate
they
to
went
that,
to
even if they
school,
don't.
Right?
Yeah.
Where I think a lot of people might not know like the tech world. I mean, they sort of know, they have the smartphones and everything like that. So just finding what jokes I can write about where it could be relatable, where it's not just like software engineers that are laughing at the jokes,
which is problem solving. We were talking about like problem solving.
I'll figure it out. I just got to try it on stage. So
I remember when I started doing roast battles, that's when I really like felt like writing jokes was problem solving, because I had to really think about all these different things that, like, normally when I wrote just stand up for myself, I would just kind of write what I thought was funny. But when it was like, it had a specific person, a specific goal in mind, and I knew what the crowd would be like, it was more like a lot of problem solving to write those jokes, which I thought was cool.
Is that usually your style? Like, you have like a more of like a darker roasting kind of style? So
roasting isn't my style. Like, that's just something I was asked to do, and I ended up really liking it a lot. But I would say off of that, like on the side, my regular stand-up is more self-depreciative. I would say a little dark for sure, but I'm not roasting other people. I'm usually roasting myself. So I guess
I'm the same way, where it's like I had to. So me and my co-host for my podcast, we on his birthday we did like a roast of, and Shady is his name, right? He's from India. So we did like a roast. Like me and a bunch of other comedians who've been on the podcast like roasted him. Like
nice.
We did like a 5-minute roasting set. And I'm more of like, I just do like comedy about like my life, or like self-deprecating humor, right? So I'm not really like an insult dark kind of comic. But I had to kind of like do that for like 5 minutes, and it just felt interesting. Like, oh, like this is kind of cool. Where I'm just like, because again, it's a roast. So I'm like, I just dug in. Like, okay, I'm just gonna like dig into every joke that I was like, because I've co-hosted with him for like 30 episodes. Like I had like a lot of material on him, right? And a lot of like personal shots that I can kind of like throw at him. So
that's always a lot of fun when you have like two people that know each other like really well doing a podcast together. I always enjoy watching that. I'm gonna have to check out your podcast.
But it was just so different for me, because like that's not really my writing style. I'm like, oh, it was like kind of cool. But
so you've never done a roast battle?
Never done like a roast battle though. But that was like more like all the comedians were just kind of like roasting the one birthday.
That's so funny. So, I'm sure there was probably some good jokes there. Roasting like kind of fell into my lap. Like I didn't seek it out. One of my friends was like, to be honest, I think they just needed a female. like they were
the case.
They were just like, hey, like
we need a token female.
he basically, it's funny. I think a lot of people like book me for their shows because they see I have a somewhat large Instagram following, but that Instagram following is for my music, not for my comedy.
That's the thing.
So like people see it and they're like, oh, she must be really good. So I think he was looking for a female. He saw that I had a decent following, and he's like, oh, she's probably good. But coincidentally, I actually, not bragging, but I actually did pretty well. And then they invited me to do the like roast tournament for the best roaster of New Jersey, and I was like, I didn't win, but the fact that I got invited after it just kind of like falling into my lap was really exciting, you know?
It is funny because like if you post like a music clip, you're gonna get way more views than a stand-up clip any day of the week. It's just so crazy.
No, I feel like that definitely helps, like just being a female in comedy, because they need females, having the music aspect, the podcast. I think it's like kind of all feeding each other, like snowballing each other. All right, so we're gonna I have a lot of selfish questions about the software engineer, but we're gonna get to the question that the listener asked. So I'm not going to be selfish anymore. So Theolone, he has 2 questions. He's a listener of the podcast. I think he's been listening ever since I started this, or like really soon into when I started
number one fan.
Yeah. So Theolone, first question from him for you. At what point in your life did you first recognize your pot? And I'm sure he means potential, but he wrote pot. At what point in your life did you first recognize your potential and seriously consider pursuing comedy? Well, we know it was in 2021, but why?
So it's so interesting because growing up, like in high school, I was like the quietest kid in school. So this is like super like unexpected. Like when like my high school like buddies, when they see me like now posting stand-up clips and stuff, they're like, we still can't believe we can't, because you like said like nothing like in high school. You were like the quietest kid in school, and now you're like on stage like just talking to like doing the scariest thing, like you know, like stand up. Because a lot of people are like, that's public speaking is like the number one thing that a lot of people are scared of.
Yeah.
And then with stand up, you're amplifying that because you got to like make jokes and got taking that silence if no one like laughs at your jokes, right?
Yeah.
So so what was started, it was in 2019. I was end of 2019. I was kind of like in a rut. You know, I went to like, you know, chase my job. I didn't really have a lot of like true strong friendships, and also, you know, I wasn't really getting laid. So I thought, like let me like go into comedy, right? Because like women like funny guys, right? So I'm like, but like I did improv. So I started with improv in 2020. So January 2020, I was like that was my New Year's resolution for 2020. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do improv. Started improv, and I loved it. I felt like I was like really at home. I think it's because like this idea where I didn't realize how funny I was. I mean, I wasn't going to just to be funny. I wanted to meet fun, cool, funny, positive people, right?
Yeah.
Just do something completely different than what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And when I started doing improv and forcing myself, and like with improv, you have to kind of like you know build these scenes out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like the comedy just comes out. I'm like, oh shit, like maybe I'm like funnier than I thought, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, cool. So then like so then we had like the showcase and a week before the lockdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the lockdown happens, like, oh, because I was gonna keep pursuing improv, right? So I'm like, okay, well, 2020 shut everything down. So then like 2021, right? I wanted to get back into comedy because I thought, oh, well, you know, I still want to do improv, but improv is still shut down. There's no vaccine, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So okay, I'll do stand up because maybe the stand up will help with the improv, right? That was the idea, right? The stand up would help with the improv because it's still doing comedy, right?
Yeah.
So I took like a stand up class at Helium, and
oh, nice. I didn't know they had that there.
Yeah. They have Chip Chantry was the instructor. It was really, really good class because like, you know, with stand up classes, they kind of get like a bad rap with comedians,
they
right?
do, yeah. But
so,
I don't buy it though.
I don't buy it because like it's like you're starting out and you're starting out with people who are also new, and like you're learning how to like write a joke, right? It's like set up punchline. There's different kinds of jokes, and you're at least practicing.
I think probably the criticism is that like that wildness or that something that they don't have the name for, like that something special that people have. You can't teach that, but I do think you could probably teach the basics of joke structure, and then from there they could develop their own a personality on stage.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
It's like in the class we were also like breaking down other comedians' jokes, like why do we think that the audience was like laughing at this joke, right? And I think just breaking down like facial expressions and like what word choices they were using, right? Those are things where I think if you start to break down
those
comedy,
are things that good comedians do on their own anyway. So you're kind of it's kind of like, you know what I mean? Like good
but
comedians.
But when you're starting out, you don't know that kind of stuff, right?
So that's what I'm saying. It's like like I'm agreeing with you that like you're learning things that inevitably you're gonna learn. You know what I mean?
You're just saving time, basically, right? I will say though, right? Not everyone who does a stand-up class is going to keep doing stand-up afterwards, right? Because like, to be honest, in the class I was in, I'm the only one who's actually kept doing it. So like the other 5.
Yes, some people probably just do it to try it.
Just to try it.
They're not interested
like,
in pursuing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was also interesting too because like I was the only guy in the class. There was 5 other women.
That was probably nice.
It was nice, but like also it's like I think that also means like when I'm writing my jokes, I think that really helps because like. It's very easy when you're just a bunch of, you know, dudes, like, just writing jokes, and it's like, oh, it's like, yeah, this is funny, right? And then, like, you take it to a show, you're like, oh, no. Like, it works with, like, this specific frat group of dudes, but it doesn't work on, like, a general, regular audience, right?
So you kind of had an advantage that, like, you had
I think so. It's so. It does help. So, so I took the class, right? Then I did my first stand-up set, and then live, right? Open mic, did my 5 minutes. Completely bombed my first 5 minutes. No laughs at all. And my mom and my brother were there. They didn't give me any pity laughs at all. No pity laughs at all.
No, that's good that they're not.
No, it's good. That was good because it kept me like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing it because it was an honest reaction. I'm like, okay, of course it sucks, right? So I just kept writing and kept working at it, and then I got better. I got better.
No, it's funny. It's funny you said before about how you were the quiet kid, and now all of a sudden you're doing this. I've been reading a lot of like philosophy and psychology lately, and I don't want to mix up who said it, but I think it was Carl Jung. I'm pretty sure it was Carl Jung that said he had a theory that was called like fragmentation, that in childhood, like, people ignore parts of themselves and suppress it. I hope like I can explain this right. They suppress certain parts of their personality, but if you ignore it for so long, they will eventually come out in some way subconsciously. Yeah. And I myself, being a really quiet kid who's also doing comedy now as an adult, I'm pretty sure that's what happened to me. Like, I was always quiet in school, but I think I might have had a wild, rambunctious part of me. Yeah. And I think maybe that wild part came out through like bad things, like it came out through addictions and stuff like that. And now I think I'm channeling that like wild side of me into comedy. Like I don't know if something that was like the same for you, like you kind of ignored like a different part of your personality or something, and now it's kind of coming out later, you know?
Yeah. And I would also say too, like, also I don't have like the loudest voice either. So like when you're in a conversation with somebody and like they're like super extroverted, like they're just gonna drown you out. I think as far as like their voice or whatever. Where I think with stand up, like everybody has to like shut the fuck up and like
and listen
and laugh and listen and laugh, right? So it's like, okay, like I have the control of the mic, right? So there's something about that too where it's like, okay, that's super interesting. Where I've gotten better at that, where I've been able to like be better at like conversations. Yeah. But I think that in itself, I think naturally helps the fact that like, okay, I'm the only one talking and everyone has to kind of listen and just react.
There's all kinds of comedians. I've seen ones that were like Bill Burr, like loudmouth, and I've seen ones that were like more quiet spoken. And honestly, sometimes that's an advantage, because if you're really like if you have a more quiet voice and you say some jokes that are like real, you know, that are like snappy, really sharp jokes, people don't expect it.
Exactly.
I feel like at any time I've seen, like, there's this one comedian, I think her name's Yumi. She's got like a very heavy Japanese accent, and her English isn't like the greatest. So I feel like that's a huge advantage for her, because anything she says like has this like sweet Japanese accent. She's like, when I had my pussy eaten, like she was just like, I literally just said that.
It's so the like voice, you could, if delivery
you, exactly. So if you have a soft-spoken voice, that could work in your advantage, where like you could just say some wild shit that they don't expect like the soft-spoken tech nerd to say.
100%. And I think also like when you look at somebody like a Robin Williams, right? He's so quiet when he's not on camera. I think a lot of people know that. And Jim Carrey's the same way, and Will Ferrell. So I think like, because they're so wild and crazy maybe on camera and those characters, they have to kind of like be so like off camera, they're so quiet and they're so like reserved.
They have to save their energy.
And that makes sense to me. And I'm like, oh, that makes total sense, because like Jim Carrey's such a character when the camera's on. Yeah. But then when the camera's off, he's like super chill though. So it's like, that's just so interesting to me. I don't think a lot of people really pick up on that and recognize that. Because like, a lot of people are like, because again, like I told you before, like a lot of people would not expect me to do stand-up, but I think that idea of like where you can be an exaggerated version of yourself on stage, and like let all this stuff out that's been like
bottling up and harboring in. That's why I like the Carl Jung theory about like fragmentation. It's like if you ignore a certain part of your personality for so long, eventually it's going to come out on its own. And if you're not careful, it could come out in dangerous ways. So like the, you know, people who do wild things, like, you know, like do self-destructive things, like they haven't found an avenue for that creative side to come out. And I think comedy is probably like a healthy way to let that out, you 100%. Know? We have one more question from Theolone. He says, what was your biggest challenge you had to overcome when first starting on stage?
I would say the biggest challenge is when you go to open mics, you're going to get comedians at all various levels that are going to be there, right? So it's not like, oh, this is like a beginner's open mic where only comedians who've been doing it for a year or two are going to be at this open mic, and then the people who've been doing it for top 5 or 10 years are going to be at a different open mic. So when you're testing out your material and you're going on stage and someone before you has been doing it for like 20 years and you're like, oh shit, I got to follow this person. That was like, oh man, like sometimes I felt like, oh man, should I just like there's like the first 5 comedians were back to back to back so strong. I'm like, oh man, should I just like leave? Should I just like should I not do my set?
Maybe kind of comparing yourself to others.
Oh yeah, 100% in the beginning. Yeah. It's like now, like I feel like I'm starting to kind of I figured out like jokes that kind of work for me, and I'm starting to, you can't really figure out your voice this early, but I'm like starting to kind of figure out like, oh, these are jokes that work for me, but because with comedy, everybody has a different personality, right?
Yeah.
So I can't compare myself to somebody who's just gonna be an insult comic or who's gonna do crowd work, right?
They're still playing around with it.
Yeah, well, because those are that's their natural style, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't. It doesn't mean I have to do that though. I can just be your own style, right? Whatever works for you, you find that out through writing jokes, and especially like in the first year, like you're just trying to go on stage and just have the courage to go on stage and just do the full 5 minutes, right? Not to get off stage and not to like leave the mic to get discouraged.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I guess a good comparison would be with music. It's not like there's one type of music. Mm-mm. There's, there could be like a heavy metal. I guess I see the point though, because it's like as a comedian, like imagine if it was music. Like if you were at a heavy metal show like Metallica or something like that, like you wouldn't follow up with the next act being like
Taylor Swift.
Like Taylor Swift. So I guess that could be a challenge for new comedians because there's so many different styles of comedians on, and it could be intimidating to like follow a loud
but
comedian.
Also I think with music, the thing with music is like no one's reacting, right? They're just like in the zone, whatever, right? Or they're just having their own conversation, right? And then afterwards, they could say, like, "Oh yeah, great job," whatever. Even though you may have sucked, they're like, "Oh yeah, great job." With stand up and comedy, in the moment when you are like bombing though, like so it's like it's a lot more like real data that's just happening in real time. Yeah. Where I think with music,
there's somewhat feedback because like I do shows and a lot of the times it depends on like the event you're doing at.
Yeah,
there's been times where I performed at like restaurants and I like thought I sucked, and then I got a lot of compliments after because people were like generally having conversations, and the music was kind of just like a supplemental environmental thing.
Right.
So then I was like shocked to get good feedback after. But then certain events were like the people are expected to dance and sing along. If they're like on their phones, like you're bombing. You know what I mean? So there are certain events where you get feedback, but then there's like the ones that are could go either way if it's like a restaurant gig.
I compare it to like, did you ever see American Idol?
Yeah.
When there's certain singers who are like, oh yeah, they've been told they're a really great singer, then they go in front of the judges and he's just like, who told you could sing? I don't know. Who told you can sing? No one told you couldn't sing. Like what?
I think the interesting thing though is like if you bomb as a comedian, you probably have a far better chance of improving compared to a singer. Like, not that singers can't get better, but you see some of those singers on American Idol where it's like you don't even stand. Like even with the best vocal lessons, you'll still be kind of bad. Like you'll still be pretty bad even with, you could probably improve, but not good enough to be a live performer. And I think the difference with comedians is that you can probably start off as awful and actually have significant improvement.
But also I think with comedians, you're building that thicker skin so early on because like you have to, right? You can't you can't be like afraid of bombing and go on stage because it's gonna happen. Like even the biggest stars like Chris Rock and Bill Burr are going to bomb in front of audiences. Now they built their own audiences. They're going to bomb less, right? Yeah. But when they're trying out new material, it's the same way that we're trying out new material. It's not like they have like, oh, these are surefire things that are going to work. They're doing the same thing. They're getting more stage time. Yeah. And they're also have an audience that like knows who they are, so maybe they get a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But it still has to be funny at the end of the day.
It's funny. Probably he was asking like the biggest overcoming. For me, and I'm sure you're probably a lot better at this than me because you do improv. For me, the biggest thing I have to overcome and still have to overcome is crowd work. Yeah. I'm terrified of it. And I would imagine as someone who does improv, you're probably a little better at it, or you're okay with it? Or how are you with crowd work?
I have to get more better at crowd work. I'm good at improv if like I know the person, right? So like I'm part of like an improv troupe. So we already have that chemistry. So like, okay, we can kind of just like, so improv itself was like the building like a scene, whatever, right? And you're doing improv comedy itself. I have no problem with because it's almost like that's all improvised.
But interacting with a stranger might feel different.
I feel like with stand-up, though, I don't know who said this, but it's almost like you need to get like 5 laughs per minute. So I always think about that. Like, okay, so if I'm gonna do crowd work, I feel like it has to like work, right? So if I don't have like a good punchline or whatever, so if I start doing crowd work and I start talking to the audience, and then they give me something, right, and I don't have like a snappy comeback, I'm like, oh, like that's the thing. But you have to do it. So I think maybe this year I should start doing more crowd work because you have to. The only way you're gonna get better at it is if you keep doing it.
Yeah.
But it's like. You just don't know what the audience is gonna really kind of give you, though.
I'm so scared to do it. Like I'm like
scary.
I really should do it, like just to get over it. But I don't. I feel like I'm very much a writer. Like I like to write things out. So when I'm kind of put on the spot, I kind of like choke up.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to overcome that. You know?
And I think the difference with improv comedy is like. It doesn't necessarily have to be funny. It just has to be engaging or entertaining, right? Because you're building like a story, right? It has to be a little bit funny, but like the funny's got to come in as you and your partner are building whatever the details are coming in. Where I think with stand-up, like it's almost like your job to be funny, right? Because the audience is constantly like, is this guy funny? Is this guy funny? Is this guy funny?
Yeah.
And even like in the back of their head, though, right?
Yeah.
Where I think with improv comedy, it gets like a bad rap because they think it's always like theater kids, whatever, and it's like it's whatever. It's not everybody's thing, but it's like I don't think there's like an expectation to be laughing every 5 seconds or
Yeah.
So
I know a little bit about improv because my dad was part of an improv group when I was little. So he was, my dad had custody of me, so I would go with him to his like improv classes. I was like 9 years old. I would just sit and watch him, and I learned a lot of like. Actually, some of my friends like we play them sometimes.
Yeah.
Like not even my comedian friends, just like friends. Yeah. Like we did. I watched my dad do all these exercises, and then I remember them. There was one where like you have an object and you throw around the object, and you
pretend like it's
like
the weight of the object.
It's usually like a weird shape. Like I could throw this to him, and every time you get the object, you have to like pretend it's a different thing. So it's round. You would think of like okay, the first thing that comes to my head, I think it's like a makeup thing. You know what I mean? And then I would pass it to him, and he'd be like, oh, whatever, a frisbee. So there was that, and then there was you have to say a story with one word, and you can't stop. It's like once upon a time. Me and my friends play that. I can't remember what the other games were, but they're. Maybe like later you can tell me some games.
There's so many games.
Yeah, because I'm limited. Like I only remember a few of them. I'd like to start practicing more of those with my friends. That might just like help me build confidence.
Yeah.
All right, I do have a few more questions for you. Those were the only two from the listeners.
Yes,
Listener,
thank you, Theo.
Theo Lone,
Theo?
yeah.
Theo, yes.
All right. Okay, my next question for you is actually. When I asked him to send me over like a little bio about what he does, because I have so many comedians on here. There's only so many times I could ask comedy questions, and I'm like, please, somebody give me something else had nothing to do with comedy.
Yeah.
By the way, to the listeners, I'm trying to branch out more and get different types of artists on here, like so I have more things to talk about. Like I have some entrepreneur guy is coming in a few weeks. He's going to talk about like the book he wrote, How to Improve Your Business, like just different things. But I was really happy to find out that Kevin here, he's very versatile. I was like, yes, something different to talk about. So this is fascinating. He likes hiking a lot. He loves hiking.
I do.
And his goal is to visit all the natural parks in the United States. And so far he's visited 17 out of 63.
Yeah.
And his goal is to visit all of them. My question for you, because I've been watching a lot of National Geographic on the Disney Plus.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was just watching a documentary about lions and the circle of life and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a life or death situation at one of these parks, like with an animal or weather or something?
I wish. No.
You wish?
I wish. That would be great stand-up material. No. I think the closest
or
is
like an animal sighting, or
I've had like I saw like a moose that was like not that far away from me. Maybe it was like 20 feet away from me. I mean, I don't think a moose can kill you. Maybe I don't know what they can do.
I don't
but
know
like
either.
it was like really really close. I was like right almost like 20 feet away. So like was that like three COVID masks? I don't know. Yeah. So but I wish, like a bear or something like that.
You never had like a mountain lion or a bear or anything like that.
No.
I'm kind of afraid I'm gonna jinx you now. That like
no, I mean like so. Here's the thing, like I would like for that to happen, but
really?
I feel like I would be scared as shit. Though I don't know what I would do. I would just want the experience. Like, hey, listen, I like locked eyes with like a mountain lion or whatever and survived. So
Yeah, it might give you some cool points with the ladies.
If
you have a story like that. You were saying before you wanted to do improv because you said you weren't getting laid. Did that help at all?
Well, I think it helped from a conversation standpoint, and but don't go into improv for the ladies. But it does help, I think, because again, like it did unlock that whole comedy brain, and you're just like, and also improv too. Like a lot of like dating, you're just kind of like bantering.
You feel more comfortable around women, like going on a first date now.
Yeah, because it's just like you're just trying to like you can almost talk about anything, like, and that's also the podcast also helps with that too, because like you're just like taking whatever questions and kind of just like expanding upon it and finding out what are interesting things about this person. So,
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So any guys out there, if you're looking to increase your game,
dude,
do some comedy. I would imagine the software engineering would be enough. No, don't. Well, like women probably would be like, ooh, money.
I think the problem is like I don't know from your experience, right? But I think a lot of women, they went on dates with software engineers, so they probably have an idea of what they think a software engineer is, though.
Yeah.
They probably think it's like a super quiet, nerdy video game, incel kind of guy. That's probably what they're thinking, right? So it's like, I mean, because there are guys who are like that, but there's also software engineers who are like actually kind of cool too. Yeah. So,
Cool. Yeah, I would imagine some women would be like seeing money in their eyes, like, oh, software engineer.
Yeah. But I think it's like there is the money aspect, but I do think because like I think that with women, if they've been on dates with other software engineers, they're gonna compare it to the
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's what I think. So I don't know.
All right.
Different than like a lawyer, right? A lawyer has money too.
Oh yeah.
Or a doctor.
Yeah, and they have like you would probably stereotype them to have a certain type of personality.
Of course, 100%.
Huh? You would kind of. I would probably stereotype a lawyer to be like kind of neurotic and like angry all the time, but that's not true because
I like good at like arguments, and you're like, oh shit, I guess I can't win any arguments.
No, I've met lawyers that were quiet and nerdy, and I met some that were like a little neurotic, but I've also met ones that were like super quiet and like chill, All right, so we're getting towards the end of the podcast. We're hitting that 45-minute hour mark. My last question for you. A little intense, but I like to ask this to my guests. This is an evolving question, so it's never going to be the same in your life. But at this current moment, what is your status on the meaning of life? What is that? It's a little much probably, but right now, like, are you a spiritual guy? Are you an atheist? Do you believe in a meaning of life? Do you think that's bullshit? Like, where are you at with that right now?
Interesting. I think the way I think about the meaning of life is, at least for me, right?
Yeah.
I think about like just like I think about like what it's kind of dark a little bit, but like what are people gonna say at your funeral? I always think about that. Like, so what is my legacy going to be, right?
Gotcha.
So I always try to like think about that. Like, okay, well, I'm doing comedy, right? So like if it were to happen tomorrow, like, I've done comedy, I've done software engineering, I'm doing improv, podcasts. Like there's a lot of like I'm leaving my mark on the world.
If you died today, you would have like a pretty good like people would say a lot of good things at your funeral.
That's my point. I think it's just like I think that you should. I try to live my life like that, and I want to keep growing, just doing a bunch of different experiences where I've like lived my life to my fullest. Yeah. So that's kind of like what I think about the meaning of life. So just enjoying every single day, every single second, because you don't know what's gonna happen. And I just brought like the whole.
Do you have any like the
whole vibe down?
And now and that was the podcast. No, I don't think it's down. I think that was very positive, actually.
Yeah.
Do you have like a spiritual feeling, or are you not so much into that?
So I am a Catholic.
Oh, cool.
And I do believe in God, and I do. I actually. So I don't know if you've heard of like have you heard like 1111 or 111?
Well, I've heard of 11, like that people see 1111 a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I see it all the time. So, and what that means is like it means that there's like angels around you. So like, I see it like all the time. At least like 3 times a week I'll see like 1111. And there was like a time period where I was like seeing it every single day.
Yeah.
So it actually started like when my mom first saw it like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And she thought, she's like, oh my God, like, am I gonna die or whatever, right? Because she
Yeah.
didn't know what it meant. Like, it's just like,
Yeah.
so she looked it up, like, no, it means like angels are around you. So it's like, I assume it's like a positive thing though, right? So I do believe in God. I do believe like there's angels but I don't really go to church every day. You know, I don't, I think it's more of like, I believe in God, I believe in angels, I believe there's like a higher power, but I also think like to do it in your own way, right?
Yeah.
Not to get too religious on
No,
here, but,
no, you're good.
So.
It's funny, the 11:11 thing, I go through like, I debate myself about that because I see it too, and I also believe it's something, but then I also debate myself and I'm like, well, what if it's just because it's such a beautiful looking number that I just notice that number more because it's so pretty?
But
you know
why
what I
does
mean?
it keep coming up though? Why is it not like 11:12? Like when you
I mean, it can only come up twice a day.
Yeah, but
like I might see, and I'm not arguing.
Yeah,
I'm that's just my mental argument with myself. Like I probably see 758 twice a day, but I just don't notice it because it's not as like symmetrical.
Okay.
I'm wondering that, but I don't necessarily
try
think
that. Try like a different time period. Like, oh, I saw this time, whatever. Every time you look at the clock, just mark it down. See.
Now the reason why I think the 11:11 could be real though is because there have been days that I challenged that where I was like, it's just a nice looking number and you notice it sticks out.
Right.
I would then see 11:11 on like other things, like that wasn't the time. Like I would see it on like a door or a license plate, and I'm like, okay, the universe is sending me a thing. Lately, I've been seeing 240. I live on 240, and again, it could just be that I recognize a number because I live on 240. But I've been noticing the number 240 a lot. Like I like if I do like a math problem on my calculator, it'll be like this equals 240. I'm like, huh? Or like so I kind of want to look into 240 and
is it
see
like
what the hell that means.
Is it like 420 and
420 just,
number?
It's just 420. I just need a pair of glasses. No, I don't know. I have like I do believe in that stuff. Like I do believe in spiritual signs as well.
Yeah.
I just sometimes wondered about the 11:11 thing, but I do.
I believe it. Only I see it so often. Like it has to be something, right? So I don't know.
All right. So we're just hitting the tail end of the podcast. That was Kevin Carrier, everybody. I'm going to include the link to Instagram. Do you have Instagram?
I have Instagram, YouTube, Spotify. I have everything basically.
I'm a big Instagram hoe. I love Instagram.
Yes.
So I'm going to include his Instagram link below if you guys want to find more of his stuff, like his podcast or anything. And then I'm sure you can find all his other things through his Instagram. That's it, guys. This is the Pranzata podcast. If you're new to this podcast and you enjoyed this, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, comment on something. What do you think about the 11:11 thing? Maybe you can comment on that.
Share it with all your friends too.
Share this, all the things that I have to say to be successful in 2023. Whatever I have to say, all this. That's it. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night.